Hello, and welcome back to another edition of the Creamsicle Chronicle podcast. My name is JT Olson, and making his triumphant return, my co host, the one and only Garrett Ballard. Garrett, you're looking good, my man.
Thank you. I appreciate it. You are too, JT. Happy to
Well,
be back. Football season is finally here. We are recording this as a football game is going on. So if you see us, if you're watching on video and see us kind of periodically looking down, we're probably checking the score on our phones. But new season brings new Bucs football to watch. In week one, we got the Minnesota Vikings. And JT and I are very lucky to be joined by Tyler Fornes, the managing editor for USA Today's Vikings Wire and the host of the Real Forno Show. Tyler, thanks for joining us. How you doing, man?
My pleasure to be here, guys. Thanks for having me. I won't be looking down on my phone because I've got three monitors in front of me, and the one just off to my left has the game, and the one just off to my right has some notes. I'm ready to rock and roll.
Man, that's golf claps all around, man. That's the setup.
well, I mean, that's the pros watching your team take the division lead in this game as the Lions trail at halftime 14-7.
Yeah. I'm. A lot of people, especially Vikings fans, are like, well, I don't like the Lions' chances because they're the Lions. They always find a way to lion. We've never seen a coach in their third year with the Lions, and there's been plenty of them in my lifetime. I'm 33 years old. There's been plenty of head coaches. There's never been one quite like Dan Campbell. He has really rejuvenized the entire franchise. They have a different mentality and culture around them, and they're playing really solid, fundamental football while finding a way to be creative and explosive. And there are still flaws, but they have this new influx of talent over the last couple of years that has really helped get them to the point where they're now the betting favorites to win the NFC North. I don't think they'll win it, but I think they're going to make the playoffs, and they're going to make some noise throughout the regular season.
They're definitely a fun team. They have so many players that are just super enjoyable to watch and are just really good football players. Real quick, I also want to say I love your hoodie. Go Gators.
This Lions offense is like a hybrid of watching Kyle Shanahan and like the University of Oregon. It just doesn't know what it wants to be. It's fun. I love it.
I can't. I'm really excited. Like he's been good so far tonight, but I'm really excited to see how Jahmyr Gibbs can kind of just take it to the next level, because it was very clear that DeAndre Swift just wasn't really in favor there. So getting someone that they like and they really want to run their run game through is going to be exciting to see.
Yeah, it didn't help that DeAndre Swift just could not stay healthy to save his life.
That is very
true. Hopefully that changes moving forward for him, because he is a very talented football player.
There's our little analysis on the game going on right now, but I think the game on all of our minds is happening on Sunday, and that is the Bucs against the Vikings in Minnesota. So unfortunately, I will not be there. Tyler, are you going by any chance?
No, I got denied credentials, unfortunately. We're still working on it, but when you run a wire site, it comes with unfortunate connotations no matter how you kind of implement whatever content you do. So we're working on that.
I hear you. I'm in the process of getting mine for the season going. So either way, there's no doubt in my mind that you will bring the best Vikings coverage, some of the best Vikings coverage out there. I know you always do a very good, thorough job, and you'll offer us some really good insights on this Vikings team that a lot of Bucs fans probably aren't too familiar with. So if you don't mind just giving us a quick rundown on the Vikings, their coaching staff, some key players that we should look out for.
Absolutely. Well, you have to start with Justin Jefferson. He is the best receiver in football, and you could argue he's the best non-quarterback in football. And according to lists done by Pro Football Network, ESPN, and the NFL players that voted, he was the number 2 player in the league, only behind Patrick Mahomes. So there's a wide range of opinions that believe he is the second best non-quarterback in football. Sorry, second best player and best non-quarterback. He's incredible. He really moves like Gumby. And there's a lot of people who may not remember Gumby, but yeah, he's that little green guy that's kind of rubbery and he can kind of move around. Dude can just do things at an insanely weird level. He can move elegantly like a professional ballet dancer. He can move explosively like a sprinter. He can do a little bit of everything, and he can even do like acrobatic stuff while he's in air. He's just special. And it's amazing that, and it was a great scouting lesson for a lot of us because all of his real success at LSU came in the slot. But he also played some on the outside the year prior. And it's about compartmentalizing and contextualizing all of those things and trying to figure out what the prospect actually is. Well, he's a great outside receiver, but he's probably the most dominant in the slot. He can do everything for you. And he's been everything to this Minnesota Vikings offense, but they didn't really take things to a better level until TJ Hawkinson came into the fold. And they got him a real number 2 weapon. And then hopefully they have another one here in Jordan Addison. We don't know how much he'll play early on because this staff absolutely loves KJ Osborne. And Osborne wasn't even drafted as a wide receiver. He was drafted as a kick returner. And that's how he was announced as a 5th-round pick. He has busted his butt and really worked his way up the ladder. And the coaching staff loves him. The players love him. And he's really earned his spot as that wide receiver too, taking over for Adam Thielen. But he doesn't really have anything special about him as far as being a great athlete, as far as being a great technician. He just kind of goes out there and wins. And I'm very intrigued to see how long they're going to keep him as wide receiver too. Addison in practice in a training camp has looked the part and looked like a bona fide number 1 receiver. So I don't know how long they're going to be able to, without knowing a better term, suppress that. So it'll be very interesting. But the defense, everybody talks about how, the Vikings were 11-0 one-score games last year. Well, Kevin O'Connell saw that there was a lot of flaws in the roster. So they decided they were going to become situational masters. And they focused a lot last year in training camp and practice on being great in situational football, 2-minute drills. And they were awful on 2-minute situations the year prior. They allowed something like 128 points in the 2-minute drill or overtime, which was an absurdly high number. And they wanted to fix that. Well, they did, and it ended up winning them 11 football games. So it's hard to sit here and be like, okay, as I have a mosquito in my face, which is always a good time. It's hard to say like, okay, they had an awful defense last year and they still were 11-0 one-score games because they had the situational master down. So now you bring in Brian Flores and some different defenders and a lot of youth on this defense. The idea is having it just an improvement of any kind of defensive coordinator and getting guys in position to succeed is going to elevate this defense to at least close to an average level. If you get them close to average, this team could be like the number 1 seed in the NFC. It's a little far-fetched, but it's not out of the realm of possibility because Ed Donatel basically said, you're a round peg, fit in this square hole. You're going to run my defense, and I'm not going to help you. And he ran the Fangio defense so poorly. He ran all the basic core concepts that we know, cover 2, cover 4, cover 6, but he didn't disguise it, and he didn't run a lot of cover 3, which is also a staple of the Fangio defense. They take quarters and then they'll morph it into cover 3 post snap, and they'll do vice versa, and they'll do all kinds of weird stuff like that. They didn't do any of that in Minnesota. They basically just ran core concepts, and it really killed them to the term of 381 yards allowed per game. And it was one of the main reasons why they were not able to do anything in the playoffs, because Zadarius Smith, top 5 in pressures with 80. Daniil Hunter, 8th in pressures with 70. And they combined for 20 sacks. They were getting pressure on the quarterback. Problem was, second they got pressure, quarterback could just dump it off for 8 yards every single time. And adding Brian Flores is going to be a massive, massive win for this football team. And that's kind of the basic synopsis of where we're at. I really don't know where this team is going to be as far as wins, because they play all of the Final Four teams from last year. And they play the entire AFC West. But this could be a genuinely better football team, and they only win 10 or 11 games.
Yeah. That was a great rundown. I really appreciate that. And kind of just looking at what you were talking about the defense and seeing how that changed over the offseason. I think the Bucs is going to be a pretty funny test in week 1 because you're talking about a defense that changed a lot. This is an offense that changed quite a lot. I mean, the Bucs obviously lost Tom Brady, new offensive coordinator, new offensive line, pretty much. Some new young guys, and the depth is just not all there. So, if you want to see like a nice, dominant, maybe just above average performance against a team, this might be the week to see it for the Vikings, and it might be one for them to build off of for sure. JT, I'm gonna kind of turn it to you now. Maybe people are listening to this from Tyler's side of it and are trying to get insight on the Bucs. So why don't you kind of give us a quick rundown on the Bucs and what we should expect from them?
Sure, man. So Todd Bowl run team, you know it's going to be defense first. You know what the talent is on this defense with the likes of Levante David, Vita Vea, Carlton Davis, Jamel Dean, two of the better cornerbacks in the league, Antoine Winfield, and adding a guy like Ryan Neal rather, to the secondary, a guy who got all-pro consideration in Seattle last year once Adams went down. This defense we expect to be good. They added Kalijah Cansey in the first round. They added Yaya Diaby in the second round, a pair of pass rushers to a team that was already 7th in the NFL in sacks. Really, the questions all float around the offense. One, Byron Leftwich out, Dave Canales in, a guy who has basically no offensive coordinator experience, which he's done and said all the right things so far, but this is someone who's only called plays at the middle school level. So they're going to be a transition, and we'll see what that actually looks like on game day. And to the quarterback, everyone talks about Tom Brady, and rightfully so. He was incredible for 2 years in Tampa. And then there was a third year that was a little rocky. But on paper, that is a massive downgrade. Brady to Mayfield, a guy who has now on his 4th team in a calendar year. So answering those questions, what Dave Canales can do to revitalize Baker Mayfield's career, that's going to really tell the tale of the Bucs season this year. And a lot of people talk about how he was with Seattle and he was the quarterback's coach for Geno Smith, bringing in that same offense that kind of revived Geno Smith's career, kind of in that same hope that he can do that with Baker Mayfield, a player who's much more talented. So it looks good in theory. Baker's done the right things. He said the right things. He has looked good in his limited time on the field. We'll see when it's for real, when the blitzes are getting a little bit more creative. Brian Flores, one of the better defensive coordinators in the league, he's going to be a great measuring stick for this Buccaneers offense. You mentioned if they're a top 20 defense, this is going to be a really good Vikings team. I think the same about the offense for the Bucs. Defense we know is going to be good. If this offense can elevate into that, middle of the pack kind of realm, this could be a really promising year. So I think this specific matchup between the Vikings defense and the Buccaneers offense is going to tell us a lot about where these two units are and where these two teams can go this year.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. I know that just from a talent perspective, if the offensive line can keep Baker off the ground for enough time, I'm not saying all the time because I don't think that's going to happen, but enough time, these receivers will give him a chance to make a throw, and they're going to make a play on the ball. I mean, we know Mike Evans, and I know there's been a lot of rumors going around about potential trades involving him because of his contract issues. But knowing the Bucs and knowing Jason Light, if he gets traded, I would be absolutely stunned. That team is going to give themselves every single chance they can to extend him and keep him in Tampa Bay. And even if that is the trade deadline coming up, I'd be shocked if they trade him. But even with the rookie Trey Palmer, he's been showing some really nice plays in preseason. So I think on both sides of the ball, the wide receiver game is going to be really interesting because on the Viking side, I am terrified of Justin Jefferson just playing anywhere really, but mainly in the slot. Tyler, you were saying that some of his best play comes out of the slot, and that's kind of the question mark of the Bucs secondary right now is like, okay, they sign Ryan Neal. How much does that help? And at the same time, Todd Bowles loves shifting around his secondary. We're going to see Winfield there. We'll probably see Chris Izzy in there, an undrafted free agent safety. It's going to be a lot of question marks, and this is going to be a really, really tough test. to get some of those question marks answered to start out the season.
Yeah, one of the interesting things about Jefferson, it's not always about him being in the slot. It's about getting advantageous matchups, moving him around, getting like condensed formations. And they do that a lot. There were multiple times where you saw Justin Jefferson line up against like edge rushers because Kevin O'Connell, kind of taking the McVay playbook and really moving him around to get those matchups. And it's not like they were covering him down on like a seam route. It was, hey, 5 yard speed out, easy money. We'll take that all day. You're going to let him line up against an edge rusher. We're going to take you for 5 yards. We're going to take you for 5 more. And it's going to be a consistent theme. So they love to use those condensed formations. And with this shift now from more of a McVay style offense to more of a Shanahan style offense, we're going to see a lot more 12 personnel. We're going to see a lot more uniqueness of those condensed formations. Like I'd love to see Jefferson at the tip of the bunch with Hawkinson and Oliver right behind. And then all of a sudden you just do like a nice toss sweep and get Madison right behind those guys. Cause Jefferson's not going to do anything but just do like a nice little cut block. But then you can have Hawkinson and Oliver just lead the way and really do some uniqueness there. And then you can branch play action off of it. And there can be a lot of really interesting looks, but it's all about getting Jefferson in advantageous situations. And the only teams that have been able to stop him, the Lions did it and the Packers did it. They sold everything to stop him. The Jair Alexander game, everybody remembers last year where he did the gritty right over the top of him. He had like multiple players over the top of him all game. So Jair could just play press man coverage. And he never had to worry about being beaten deep. So he wasn't even that great, so to speak, in the game because he had that help. He wasn't left on an island like Darrelle Revis. He was basically told, hey, you're going to have help all game. Do your thing. And it worked. And the Vikings weren't able to capitalize outside of that. With the addition of Addison and Oliver, I think they're going to be able to capitalize a lot more on teams selling out to stop Jefferson.
Yeah, I think just from my perspective, some of that is kind of my concern with the Bucs right now is because while they do have talent, Jamel Dean and Carlton Davis, probably one of the better outside cornerback duos in the league. If you were
they
to
don't
ask
get talked about enough. They're excellent players.
They really are. Jamel Dean last year was one of the best corners in the league. I mean, he was outstanding. But the thing about a Todd Bowles defense is as creative and as fun as it can be to watch, it's aggressive. You know, he's not going to really back down. He's going to send his safeties. He's going to send his linebackers. And that sometimes leaves some of his other areas on his defense out to dry a little bit. You're going to see there's unless he's adapting a lot, you're going to see a lot of single coverage looks, a lot of safeties one-on-one with receivers at times, a lot of linebackers one-on-one with receivers at times. And like we just talked about, that's a problem against Justin Jefferson. So I'm cautiously optimistic that he can rein in his aggressiveness and kind of find a way to limit him. They're not going to be able to shut him down unless they, like you said, sell out. But now the Vikings, like you said, have other options. I don't know. I'm feeling out testing the waters here, seeing how things are going to look, but I'm nervous.
Man, I don't blame you. I'm nervous for the Vikings then too, especially when Flores is going to be a much, much more aggressive defense. And people are like, oh, the Donna shell. Like they're just going to allow everything. Well, if you don't get home with that blitz and they're able to actually protect it and they call the right adjustment at the line of scrimmage, and then you get burned for 20 yards, it's going to be the same conversation. It's just going to be losing in a different way. Yep. So the Vikings still have talent voids on defense. They don't have a great defensive line. They have great edge rushers. But in that 3-4, their best defensive lineman is Harrison Phillips. He's fine, but they're starting him at nose tackle at 307 pounds. That's not going to work. You need a real two-gapper. Kyrus Tonga right behind him, 7th-round pick of, I think, the Falcons in 2001. He played great last year. But he needs to be your starting nose because he's big enough and capable enough to actually two-gap. So there are areas of weakness for this team, and I'm really concerned about how the defense is going to be, not necessarily week one, but once teams get like 3-4 weeks of tape, because week 1, the Vikings defense looked tremendous last year against the Green Bay Packers. Once teams got tape, then they started to torch them, and there was no adjustments, and it got worse and worse and worse.
Tyler, you mentioned that this Vikings defense is a little bit talent void in some areas, but one area it's absolutely not is Danielle Hunter. And this is, in my opinion, one of the best and most underrated pass rushers in the NFL. Can you just tell Bucs fans a little bit about Danielle Hunter? Because I think he never gets the shine he deserves, and this could be one of the biggest mismatches in the game. A guy like Danielle Hunter going against what is essentially a rookie right tackle in Luke Gedeke as he's making the switch from guard to right tackle.
Oh, Gedeke's the right tackle. Oh my goodness. Yeah, Danielle Hunter's going to kill him. So the weird thing with Danielle Hunter is one of the reasons why he doesn't get a lot of publicity. He's very quiet. He just has him and Harrison Smith. They are just reserved personalities, and it's not an insult. It's just kind of who they are. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Some guys are very boisterous, and they like to talk, and they like to be, like, for lack of a better term, flamboyant in their actions. There's some people who just, they go to work, they do their job, they have a small celebration, and then they don't talk. And that's kind of those two guys. And it's been a real interesting discussion about leadership on this football team because they're not vocal leaders. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, because leading by example can be just as important as being vocal about it. It just all depends on how your teammates receive it. So I think that's why he doesn't get a lot of that publicity, because he doesn't.
Justin Herbert.
Yeah, I think so. I think Herbert talks more than as a general construct than Hunter, but I think you're on the right track.
I just remember him coming out of Oregon. People were like, he's not a leader.
He's not that alpha.
Yeah.
It's because
a little bit of a Levante David.
I can't believe you're doing fishing like that.
I know.
As a guy who lives in the Midwest, you don't insult fishing. That's just not what you do.
Sorry to interrupt you, by the way.
Oh, you're fine. So here's the thing with Hunter. He doesn't have this elite first step, but he is incredibly freaky athletic. And he's 6'5", 265, and it's all muscle. It's just, he's chiseled out of granite. And he doesn't necessarily win with the first move, but he sets you up and destroys you with a counter or a second move. So he'll like transition from like a club rip right away to a quick spin around the tackle, and then he'll be in the quarterback's face. It's also one of the reasons why I think extending him makes a lot of sense. He doesn't rely on athleticism like a lot of other edge rushers to really take advantage and get to the quarterback. He relies on technique, and he's got a bevy of pass rush moves. And that's why he's been so successful. He just understands how to attack and how to get to the quarterback, and understands what to do when he's losing. That's something a lot of edge rushers don't figure out. Every edge rusher can win. What do you do when you're losing? How quickly can you flip that around, and can you change it so you're back on the winning track? Not everybody can do that. Hunter's great at it, and that's probably his best strength. 10.5 sacks last year doesn't feel like a lot. 70 pressures, 8th in the league, as I mentioned earlier. That is a lot. And he impacts the quarterback a lot more than he's given credit for, especially in this town. There's some people who just absolutely thought he should be traded. There's one guy who said, "Oh, we should trade him in Miami for Mike Gesicki and a 3rd-round pick." Well, that aged like poo. And he is just tremendous. And now you have Marcus Davenport on the other side. Davenport had a better pressure percentage last year than Danielle Hunter. He had a top 10 pressure percentage overall. I think it was 17.6% of all of his pass rushes ended in a pressure. He only had half a sack, but I look at sacks and pressures like pizza. A pressure is a really good cheese pizza. A sack is that really good cheese pizza with the toppings you want on it. You're fine just having the really good pizza, but if you get the toppings, that just makes it better, and it makes it ideal. But if you continuously get to the quarterback, that's what matters more than just having that optimal outcome, because you can do so many other things. It can turn into a pick six. It can turn into incompletions. It can turn a 3rd down into a 4th down. And having Davenport on that other side with his similar size and freaky athleticism could give the Vikings a really unique duo, because those guys are going to line up in the A gaps. They're going to line up all the way at wide 9 and everywhere in between. It's going to be really fun to watch how these two get used. And it's because of Danielle Hunter's skill set, because you can do so many different things with him.
Yeah, JT, I want to kind of echo a lot of what Tyler was saying at the end there about the pressures and relate that to Tampa Bay, because last season I think every single Bucs fan and writer and analyst was familiar with the pressures, right? They were getting so many pressures, but they really struggled to get to finish. They couldn't get the sacks, right? What do you think about that heading into this year? Obviously, they added Kalijah Cansey. Logan Hall, another year under his belt. They still got Vita Vea, believe it or not, who I think was their leading sack getter last year. Am I correct in that?
That is correct. 6.5.
Yeah, Vita Vea, 6.5 sacks, leading the team.
God, he's so good.
Yeah, I love Vita. He's so good. Shaq Barrett, back, healthy. What are your expectations from this Bucs D-line this year?
Well, I think my biggest.
I should say this game. Sorry.
Oh yeah,
not this year.
I think the one I'm most intrigued by in terms of pressures is the one guy you didn't mention, and the guy we both love, I know, is Joe Tryon-Shoyinka.
Of course, how could I forget?
Oh, that's our guy
man,
right there.
That's my man. How did I do that? Wow.
And I know a lot of the Bucs fan base is down on JTS because he's had 4 sacks each of his first 2 years. Last year was very underwhelming in terms of sacks. But people a lot of times don't realize he was top 40 in the NFL in pressures, which made him a high-end number 2 pass rusher. So in terms of pressures, he is more disruptive than people realize. It's just a matter of, refining some counter moves and actually getting hands on the quarterback and getting him to the ground. And then, we know what Shaq is. If he is remotely healthy, then he's going to be extremely disruptive. And this is against a pair of really good Vikings tackles. I mean, Brian O'Neill is, again, one of those guys who's not talked about very often, but he's one of the better right tackles in football. And then we all know Christian Darrisaw coming out of the draft just a couple of years ago. I mean, dude's a stud. So that's going to be a really
nasty. Like, he was getting Trent Williams comparisons last year, and he's the film, he lives up to it. He is burying guys and putting them into the shadow realm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he is right up there with guys like, we talk about Tristan Wirfs, and here in my area, I live in Michigan. We talk about Penny Sewell. Darrisaw's right in that conversation. This is that next wave of great tackles in the NFL. All of these guys are at the top of the game.
Yeah, I was going to say there's a lot of really good young offensive tackles. I am very interested to see Tristan Wirfs on the left side. I think he's going to dominate, but a switch is a switch, so there's always a bit of stuff to look out for.
And it's interesting because he didn't even play left tackle at Iowa. I don't think he's played left tackle since high school, if he even played it there.
Yeah,
he played a little bit at Iowa. I know Arlick Jackson went down for them for a little while.
Oh, that's right.
He, stepped in, and he stepped in so seamlessly. He was great there for that couple of games he played there.
When you move like he does, and just have such technical refinement like he does, ideally it should just go so easily, and I'm hoping it does. And I've heard nothing that suggests that it hasn't. So.
But we saw that same struggle with Luke Gedeke last year. I mean, I know myself personally, I projected him as a guard coming into the NFL, but that switch from right tackle to left guard, he talked about his struggle with it. He described it as trying to wipe your butt with the other hand, and that seems incredibly uncomfortable. So, not everyone can do it.
Somebody who basically wasn't able to wipe their own butt for like 2 weeks after I had my surgery. Let me tell you, if you can't and you're struggling, that's a fantastic comparison. Like it's tremendous because you're trying to relearn everything with it, and mine was different. I couldn't use either side, but hell, if you're trying to do it with the other hand, like everything's off. You don't have the muscle memory and stuff, and that's really the biggest thing, muscle memory.
Yep.
Yeah, because if you're thinking about it, then you're hesitating, and then you're beating the NFL. It's the game happens that fast.
You can't think in the NFL. You just have to do.
But
enough poop talk.
Yeah, that's
the high quality.
Got a bit off track, but kind of continuing off of staying with the front seven. Devin White has been in the headlines quite a bit this offseason with trade talks and stuff that's saying he wants a new contract, wants to be the highest paid linebacker in the league. But at the end of the day, he's in Tampa. He's going to be our starting linebacker opposite Levante David. Are you expecting anything new from Devin White, JT?
Expecting? Not really. Hoping? It'd be nice if he eliminated some of those bonehead plays and this would be his fifth year. You think, you get a little bit older, a little bit more mature, a little wiser, and you stop just, abandoning responsibilities to try and rush a passer.
Yeah.
We'll see if that happens. I'm not necessarily optimistic. I think Devin White kind of is what he is at this point. He's very boomer bust. He's very splashy. He'll make those sideline to sideline tackles. He'll bust through the line and make a sack, but he'll also get crossed up in coverage and leave guys wide open. So
yes,
I would like to think there's some natural growth and wisdom entering year 5, but I might have hoped that going into year 4, and it just wasn't the case. So I'm not expecting anything different than what we've seen, and just kind of accepting he is what he is. He's kind of a battering ram. He's kind of a wrecking ball, and he's all about the swag and the flash and the sizzle, and kind of want to sweep the rest under the rug, and that rest kind of turns into touchdowns a lot of times.
A quick follow-up. How much of maybe my favorite name on the team, how much of Servassier Dennis do you think we'll be seeing this weekend?
I would say part of that
you cut out for 2 seconds. It might have been my end. Can you just say that one more time?
Oh yeah, I would say probably just special teams.
Okay.
He missed some time during training camp. He missed 2 preseason games. The 1 preseason game he was in, he didn't look great. He looked like a rookie, playing his first game in the NFL. He didn't miss basically any tackles in college, and you could tell he was just a beat slow in this first game he played. And, guys were getting by him, and he knew he had a bad game. But on the other side of that, KJ Britt had a great preseason. I mean, a guy who I had completely written off as just a special teams 2-down thumper, just, a kind of a dinosaur in this league. He looked trim. He looked athletic. He looked way beyond anything I ever envisioned him being.
Yes.
So if KJ Britt can continue, not being a liability in coverage and, utilizing this, what seems like brand newfound speed. I don't even know where it came from. It's almost like a complete body transformation. He deserves to be that number 3 linebacker above a guy like Dennis, who I think we were both really high on coming into the, preseason training camp time.
Yeah, I agree with you. He has looked very good. And, like you said, it could just be Dennis learning the ropes, and that's fine. I mean, it was a 5th-round draft pick, his first time in the NFL. It's fine. Tyler, I want to kind of transition to back just briefly before we switch to the offense, but I want to talk to you a little bit about the Vikings secondary. Their depth chart lists a Caleb Evans and Byron Murphy as their starting corners, and then Harrison Smith and Cam Bynum as their safeties, correct?
Yep. And Pat Mahomes just threw a pick 6.
No way.
Really? It was a drop by the receiver. I think it might have been Tony. It looked like a crossing route. So
was it Brian Branch who got the pick 6? Tell me it was Brian Branch.
If that's 32, then yes, it was Brian Branch.
I don't know if it is, but I know Brian Branch is a stud, and I want it to be him. Top 10 player in this draft.
I love Brian Branch.
He's so good.
It was Brian Branch.
That's right, it was.
Look at that.
For the brand.
So the interest, I went right through Kadarius Toney's hands. Tremendous play.
Tony.
So we have Byron Murphy and Caleb Evans are your starting outside cornerbacks. And then in nickel, Murphy's going to slide in and play slot. And then 3rd-round pick Mekhi Blackman is going to be your nickel corner. Then they also have a big nickel package where newly extended safety Josh Metellus is going to be playing that big nickel. So they're going to use that a lot because their linebacker depth is not great. Like Ivan Pace Jr. looked like the 2nd or 3rd best linebacker on the team all throughout camp. Jordan Hicks is going to be fantastic on 1st and 2nd down because he's a thumper. He's an old school linebacker who's going to be able to fill gaps and fit the run really nicely. He's not going to be able to do a lot on 3rd down for you. That's one of the reasons why they got rid of Eric Kendricks. He just couldn't do it anymore. And the safeties are interesting because Lewis Cine, 1st-round pick last year, played 2 defensive snaps for snapping his leg in London. He's kind of the odd man out right now. He's not getting a lot of reps. There's talk of he may not see much playing time right away. And it's very interesting to see what's going to happen with that. because obviously Cine has a lot of potential and he's just a freak athletically. But
sorry to cut you off real quick, but Lewis Cine, I was stunned that the Buccaneers did not take him in the first round last year. I think a lot of Bucs fans were too. I think Pewter Report had him slotted as the guy they wanted, and they ended up trading out of the first round and getting Logan Hall. So
let me tell you, Logan Hall, member of the All 4-0 team. I love that guy.
Hey, he had his ups and downs last year, hoping for more consistency.
Yeah, Logan Hall needs some positive publicity on this podcast, so the Logan Hall love is appreciated.
Yeah, I loved what he was able to do at Houston. Did not get to watch him much as in his rookie year, but I will forever be able to say Chris Olave is the best wide receiver in this draft, and I was right. I don't care if Garrett Wilson won offensive rookie of the year. A lot of you prop. But yeah, the secondary is interesting because there's talent. They don't have a cornerback on the roster above the age of 25, so it's young. But the safety room, they kept 6 safeties because all 6 of them played really well in the preseason and training camp. Well, they only kept 4.5 corners, and I say half because one of the corners they kept, his name is Najee Thompson, and he is a special teams ace. Just incredible player. He lives and breathes special teams. He's like a true college football kind of sicko. He lives and breathes it. So they only have 4 true corners. Jay Ward, rookie out of LSU. He played outside and slot corner significant snaps at LSU. So you have the versatility there. Obviously, Cam Bynum was a corner at Cal. So there's versatility in the defensive backfield and being able to kind of mismatch and try and figure out what you're going to want to do, especially with sub packages. But this cornerback room, if let's say Byron Murphy does not prove to be worth his contract, or a Caleb Evans, and Andrew Booth Jr. is in the doghouse, by the way. He's cornerback 4. Bummer. And he is, the injuries really killed him. He needed time to just kind of figure it out, and it's a really slow process right now. He's too aggressive, and the aggressive right now is too detrimental. So if they don't figure it out quick, it could be rough.
Yeah. I will also say, big Cam Bynum fan coming out of Cal. I like this tape a lot. Is he kind of just strictly safety, or does he still play corner every now and then?
He is a safety. And honestly, I think that's best for him.
Yeah.
Because he's a talented guy, but he just doesn't have the overall athleticism to be able to live on the outside. Yeah. I think they may start using him in the slot in some of those sub packages and just kind of drop him down. And especially once you get Lewis Cine involved, who I think the idea is he takes over for Harrison Smith next year because they play a very similar style of football. So I'm intrigued to see what happens there. But yeah, Bynum, good player, really good instincts.
Yes.
Cannot survive on the outside. You could do that in a pinch if you get desperate.
Yep.
But he's figured out safety pretty nicely.
Yeah, that was my sorry for the random draft talk listeners. At the end of the day, we are all draft nerds.
We'll never apologize for draft talk. Don't be ridiculous.
Yeah, you're not wrong. But Cam Bynum coming out, I was like, he's not that fast. But glad to see he's found a role up there because I liked him. He's very, very instinctual. Has a knack for the ball, I think. But that's interesting because I mean, the strength of this Bucs team for as long as I can remember, probably since drafting Mike Evans, has been the receiving room. And sounds like it's a pretty unproven group of corners so far. You're saying there might be some turnover, a lot of people coming in, coming out. So that'll be an interesting matchup to just watch throughout the entire game because the ball is going to get thrown. You got to watch it. So, that's good information.
A Caleb Evans 4th round pick last year played well. He played almost 200 snaps, but he suffered 3 concussions, and that's not good. No. They shut him down after that 3rd one. Like the 2nd one was kind of like, the wording's not right in calling it a phantom concussion, but they haven't necessarily said if it was the first one hadn't fully healed, but he passed the protocol and then he just made it worse, or if it's completely separate concussions. Either way, not a great sign when it comes to your long-term health in this league, and really frustrating to have that happen to him. But he played well. He still can't turn. His hips are pretty stiff, but his knack for the ball is still there. And I'm intrigued to see this defense, because I mean, you're going to do a lot of man stuff, but the Bengal Hawk blitzes where you have 8 guys on the line of scrimmage and then you've got to play off man. That kind of stuff he can do really well. He's got long arms, and I'm intrigued to see how he continues to grow. The ceiling's not there with him like it is with Booth, but he's got everything else down right now that Booth just doesn't.
Yeah. Do you think he'll mainly? Do you think they're going to try and keep him around Mike Evans because of that length and ability to just play the ball?
I think so. Because of the presence of Godwin, I'm not expecting them to necessarily have somebody to follow Mike Evans, because actually Byron Murphy might follow Godwin for the sole fact that Godwin plays outside and then he plays a lot in the slot, if I recall correctly. Yes. So then he can travel and you don't have to worry necessarily about getting torched in the slot, because Murphy is a really good slot defender as well. I can see that happening, and then you do end up having that a Caleb Evans and Mike Evans matchup, but I don't think they're going to necessarily be like, oh, we need to stop Mike Evans.
Yeah.
Well, you need to stop Chris Godwin too, and I think they're just going to kind of play their defense and just live with it.
I'm going to say it now. Watch out for Trey Palmer. 4.3 speed, guy had a good preseason, could be a killer.
Trey Palmer.
JT, I want to ask Tyler about. I think you got to ask him about the front man, Kirk Cousins. What should people expect from Kirk Cousins this year? Anything different?
So going into last year, I was very critical of Kirk Cousins, and there were people talking about, oh, he's going to show growth. He's going to start doing all these things. He has an offensive-minded head coach now. And I'm like, okay, he's going into his age 34 season. Why is he going to change? What is going to, there's the you can't teach an old dog new tricks adage. Well, Kirk Cousins has been playing quarterback for the better part of his life. You could arguably say 22, 23 years. Why is he all of a sudden going to get more aggressive now? That doesn't make sense. And if he does, I'll eat crow. Well, I ate quite a bit of it, because everybody's going to meme the hell out of that 4th and 8 in the playoff game. Yes, he should have tried to attack downfield. The idea was, and he talked about, he's like, yeah, I probably should attack downfield, but I had TJ Hawkinson one-on-one against the defender, and I was hoping he could just beat him. And there really wasn't a whole lot open downfield either. And when you kind of pair it together, frustrating. But throughout the majority of last year, his completion percentage went down. His yards went down, but his yards, air yards, went up. He was trying to attack down the field, and he's responsible for part of why he got hit so much. And if you watch quarterback, you realize he had a broken or a really damaged rib, and he didn't tell anybody. Nobody, not even we, knew about it. And he kept it really quiet, but it's because he stood in there, took a lot of hits, and attacked down the field, something he had really never done unless it was completely out of necessity in garbage time. One of the reasons why he got that garbage time moniker. And I thought it was really impressive how he was able to show that kind of growth. And Kevin O'Connell was just like, look, this is your offense. You run it. You don't have to ask me for permission for things. There was a scene, I think it was in quarterback, where he saw Adam Thielen's kid in the locker room, and he was like, oh, I can bring my kid in here? Zimmer hated him. It was there's this divide between Democrats and Republicans. It was a hardcore Democrat and a hardcore Republican. No, it just doesn't work. They just don't get along. They don't have the same ideals, and that's kind of what the relationship with Zimmer and Kirk Cousins was. Zimmer didn't watch film with him until his final season in 2021.
That's insane.
That is insane.
That's insane.
Tom Brady and Bill Belichick watch film for hours every single week and talk about things. And Zimmer didn't do it with his quarterback until his final season. And those kind of things really marred his tenure. And we're starting to kind of see a different side of Kirk. He's a dorky dad. He's a father of 2 boys. He married his college sweetheart, and he wears stuff from Patagonia. And the whole Kohl's joke, He even said, yeah, my wife dresses me. I'm not really a fashion guy. I'm fine. He's just a dorky dad. He just happens to be a good NFL quarterback. And the fact that he finally started embracing himself around everybody, and they really embraced him with the Kirk O'Chains thing, that introduced a level of camaraderie that this Vikings team hasn't had in a long time. And when you combine it with how Kevin O'Connell's really embraced him and tried to get him to be more aggressive and attack down the field, it's presented an interesting conundrum for the Vikings. Do they try to keep him? And do they try to keep him as the future of this team for at least a few years? But he's about to turn 35. That's historically when your arm starts to go. He doesn't have an elite arm. He's got a very good arm. He can make those out routes, but he can't make those special throws. And when you have an elite arm, it goes slower, and you don't really lose like a ton of arm strength. Like you'll go from like Josh Allen to Kirk Cousins, but from like age 35 to 37. Kirk Cousins could shrink a lot faster, and he could become a lot less impactful just because he doesn't have that elite arm talent. And I think that's one of the reasons why the Vikings may not keep him, and they're looking at a potential option after the season. But this season, they have a chemistry, and this is the first time in Kirk's professional career he will have the same play caller in back-to-back seasons.
Wow.
So that's going to make an impact too. And I'm really intrigued to see how everything's going to kind of pull together, because there's a lot of variables, but a lot of them could end up being really positive for this team. And I hope we see aggressive Kirk again, because last season was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's some awesome insight there. You heard it here first. Kirk Cousins, baby arm incoming. JT, anything else you want to add or ask Tyler?
Yeah, let me have you put your coaching hat on, Tyler. Okay. We know how good this Vikings offense is and how good this Bucs defense is. I think it makes for a really fun matchup. How would you attack this Buccaneers defense if you're kind of running the show for the Vikings?
Interesting. I know a lot of what Todd Bowles likes to do is really be aggressive. I would try to bait him into being really aggressive and take advantage of him over the top. I think you have to challenge these linebackers with your tight ends. And Josh Oliver's not known as a pass catcher. Well, he was coming out of San Jose State in 2019. That's all he did. He wasn't a blocker. So theoretically, you have a complete tight end who could be a tight end one opposite of your tight end one, TJ Hawkinson. So I think you need to really establish a semblance of a running game, get Alexander Madison, 35 yards on the first two drives, really establish that, hey, we can run on you, and then really get play action and take advantage up the seams and just behind the linebackers with a bunch of daggers and seam routes and do some of that kind of stuff. I think if you can get those linebackers moving and being a little bit too aggressive coming towards the line of scrimmage, you can take advantage of them over the top. I don't necessarily know how much you're going to be able to do that. I think you can do that with Devin White. I don't know if you can do that with Vontae David, because that's one of the smartest players in the NFL. But I think being able to do that and really attack the middle of the field with that aggressiveness, because even if Levante David being smart, if he has to blitz, then I think you can start to take advantage of some of that stuff. So I'm not worried that Justin Jefferson's going to get his. I think he will, but I think facing two really good cornerbacks in Dean and Davis, I think it's going to be harder for him to do so. And I think this could be a real secondary weapon type of game, and that's what's going to carry this team.
Yeah, so pretty much what I heard is that you're going to bait Devin White downhill, and then just hope Levante isn't Superman.
See, and what I heard,
Superman, so
he's so good. But
anybody who says Devin White's the best linebacker on the Bucs is insane. Yeah, and I mean that with love. It's Levante David. He's incredible.
Yeah, we're talking about underrated players today. He's one of them for sure.
Yeah, he's all underrated
years.
Linebacker.
He's insane. But yeah, I honestly, if I was in your spot, I would say the exact same thing. I think that's probably how the Vikings could beat this team. So, JT, you got anything else?
I'll do the same exercise, but I'll flip it because
Yes, good call.
the Bucs offense we know is a big question mark with Mayfield and Canales, and an offensive line now without Ryan Jensen. That's a little bit. I don't want to call it a hodgepodge because they invested high draft picks in the likes of Robert Hainsey and Luke Gedeke, but it's a little bit of a hodgepodge. It's kind of a work in progress. We only got to see a couple of snaps of this group in the preseason together as a full unit. And then kind of similar with the defense of the Vikings, a lot of new names, new faces, new coordinators. So if you're the Vikings defense and you're Brian Flores, how are you attacking this Bucs offense?
I'm getting Baker Mayfield uncomfortable. And when he continuously gets pressured, he will panic. And that's something we saw in Oklahoma. It's something we saw in Cleveland. That's something we saw in both Carolina and Los Angeles last year. If you can get him to panic, you can take advantage of him. I'm not out on Baker Mayfield. I think there's still good football left in him. He got screwed at the end of his Cleveland tenure with them going to get Deshaun Watson, and he played through a torn labrum and not throwing shoulder. We saw what happened to Quinn Ewers last year. Ewers looked really good in that Alabama game. Then he could never really figure it out with that accuracy and power through his arm trying to attack down the field, especially in that intermediate level, because that can really mess up a lot for you because you're still torquing that shoulder in order to throw the football. And he played through it. He wanted to be a warrior, and it ended up costing him big time. And I think he's got a chip on his shoulder for that. But when you look at Baker, if you pressure him, you can get in his head and he can make some poor decisions because he's a gunslinger. But I don't know if you know this, my favorite football player of all time, Warren Moon. He's probably the OG gunslinger, one of the best quarterbacks nobody talks about. And he would always try to make the throw, even when it wasn't warranted. He didn't panic in the pocket. I mean, he was lucky enough to have two Hall of Famers protecting him, Mike Munchak and Bruce Matthews. And Brad Hopkins was pretty good too. But he would get in trouble because the offense, you would always try to make that throw and you would try to be really aggressive. And I think you could take advantage of Mayfield that way. But Mayfield can also take advantage of you. And just all it takes is two passes to Mike Evans to put 14 points on the board. And Mike Evans has done more with bad quarterbacks than anybody I've seen in a long time. And it's not necessarily an insult. Like Josh Freeman was okay for a couple years. And then you had Jameis Winston, who I've never thought was that good, but he still was able to throw for like almost 5,000 yards and 30 touchdowns. We'll ignore the 30 interceptions. But
that's every Bucs fan right there, by the way.
Yeah.
Like 5K yards, 30 touchdowns. But what about the picks?
Hey, some of those went for touchdowns. That's pretty impressive, right?
Hey, his first and last pass as a Buccaneer, pick six.
Yeah, that's absolutely incredible.
Poetic.
You can't. Yeah, it is poetic. Yeah, all it takes is Mike Evans just being Mike Evans. Like Mike Evans finally got a good quarterback in Tom Brady, and guess what they did? Some pretty cool stuff. Like not even Johnny Manziel was a good quarterback. He just played backyard football, and it worked. You combine everything, and Baker scares me a little bit, but if you make him panic, it's game over.
Yeah, I real quick, I was talking to my friend about this, but Mike Evans pretty much went from Johnny Manziel to a year of Mike Glenn, or it was Josh McCown, a year of Josh McCown, and then he just got the NFL equivalent of Johnny Manziel in Jameis Winston, just chucking it up and hoping Mike Evans catches it. A lot of times he did, a lot of time he didn't because he just threw it to the linebacker. But that was some really awesome insight, Tyler. We really, really appreciate you coming on. This was a great episode. Hopefully gave a lot of Bucs fans some much needed info on the Vikings, because I feel like the Vikings are very these are two teams that are very not talked about a lot. Like I feel like the Bucs and Vikings are pretty quiet on the NFL front. You don't hear much national media talking about them. So it's always good to get someone who knows what they're saying on here. I want to give you however long you want to just plug whatever you want. So please take some time.
Absolutely. I'll take about the next half hour because I have enough plugs for about 30 people. You can find me on Twitter at The Real Forno, as it says on the screen. I am the manager of USA Today's Vikings Wire. The wire sites are kind of designed for aggregation and to just drawing clicks. And we try to do that as well because we have to. But we try to do it with quality content. And we do a lot of NFL draft stuff. We have Kevin Fielder, who has written for like Underdog Dynasty and now works for the Kansas State Rivals site. He is doing this thing that he used to do on Reddit back in the day, calls it a quarterback tasting menu. And it's basically a synopsis of where like the top like 12 quarterbacks are in college football and what they're going to be doing this weekend and how you can see it. So Vikings fans have a good semblance of, hey, who could the Vikings take once Kirk Cousins is potentially gone? And we do all that. We talk about everything. We do legit film breakdowns with all 22. Like, we're not a traditional wire site. We try to be a real content site. I also host the Real Forno Show on the Vikings First and Goal YouTube channel. For Bucs fans, if you want to go check it out, we did an hour preview on the game from a Vikings perspective. And yeah, there's some really good insight. I had Vikings beat reporter Judd Zulgad, who also writes for me at Vikings Wire, on with me. And we broke it down from multiple different angles, some of which we didn't get to here. And then if you love pro wrestling, I host The Good, the Bad, and the Hungy on the Voice of Wrestling Podcasting Network. We talk about all elite wrestling. And we spent basically an hour talking about how CM Punk sucks. And it was pretty CM Punk, God, I could spend an hour at least talking about how much I hate that guy right now. But yeah, I kind of do a little bit of everything. I'm also a college football betting analyst for College Football Network, and my Against the Spread article comes out tomorrow morning. Spoiler alert, smash Texas State again. GJ Kinney is going to pull out another win, this time against UTSA. You beat Baylor by 11. I think he's going to beat UTSA.
Look at this. So Tyler Fornes, your one-stop shop for Vikings, NFL draft, wrestling, and college football betting. That is if I've ever heard of a well-rounded journalist, that is it right there. Tyler, we appreciate you coming on. This was an awesome show, an awesome time with you, but I have to end it as I always do, saying go Bucs.